hydrometeorological value chain is defined as a chain which starts from the user end, knowing your users, what their requirements are, and from there designing services that meet those users. Of course, there are several steps in between. We need to have an observation network, which, depending on the level of sophistication and development of a country, can be varied from just surface-based observations to remote sensing and space-based observation. And then we can have the numerical weather predictions and the forecasting system, then the production of forecasts and warnings and dissemination of those products to the users, so that when they receive it, it will be in the form of services that they require. The communication with the end users is one of the most important links in this chain, and sometimes this link is the weakest and gets broken or never forms, in fact, from the start. But one thing that's important to know is that if any link in this chain breaks, then the value chain breaks and it doesn't work. So one, I would say, is lack of education of the users. People in Africa depend a lot on information, weather information, climate information, but probably they are not really well educated in understanding the impact that this information can have on their businesses and on their day-to-day activities, whether they are farmers or whether they work in factories that they produce things that are really weather and climate sensitive. So any activity that is weather and climate sensitive, you need to have some information about how weather impacts your day-to-day operation. Also, especially climate information is very important for longer-term planning and for investment planning. Second one is that there's a lot of investment made in the Hydromet services in Africa, but sometimes after the initial investments, there is not enough investment to keep that system going. So when we don't have maintenance and operation budgets to look after our observing network or keep renewing and updating and upgrading our capabilities to produce better forecasts, it means that we are stuck with something which eventually becomes obsolete, becomes old. In case of equipment, they fall apart, and if they are not maintained and replaced as they should, then there is not really the final impact, if you like, or result of the investments. To overcome this, we have recently started working on something which is called concept of operation, CONOPS. And as part of the strategies of the World Bank investments, we require that prior to investment, we develop the Met services develop the CONOPS, which means designing every part of the modernization activities together with the investors. And as part of that, we insist that there should be sufficient operation and maintenance budget to make sure that 10 years, 15 years down the line, we are not end up with a broken and obsolete network of equipment. And we really need to advocate that Met services are seen and are taken their seat at, for instance, planning for economic development, planning for disaster management. They should be there because what they provide is absolutely key to the activities of economic sectors and disaster managers. There were very interesting panelists. They produced very interesting opinions and ideas and presentations. Putting the user at the center is a very strong key message that came out. Producing services that are not only useful but usable by somebody who receives that information is another key message that came out. And also the fact that we need to think about local impacts of Hydromet events. And of course, we have made a lot of progress and improvement in meteorology when we are looking at the global events, even regional events. But the most difficult ones are really looking down at a particular district, at a particular part of a river, at a particular embankments that where villages are, and to try to come up with advice and actions that will help save lives and people's properties and livelihoods. And for this, again, a tool that is being developed now, and we certainly are advocating the faster development of this tool, is impact-based forecasting, which means not just giving people information about the Hydromet event, but how it will impact them, where they are, and about what they are doing. Therefore, impact-based forecasting will be a very powerful tool, but also a very challenging tool to develop.